a major political development out of KwaZulu-Natal, where Premier Thami Ntuli has successfully fended off a motion of no confidence this week. The motion, which aimed to unseat the recently appointed Premier, was tabled by the uMkhontoweSizwe party, the MKP, but ultimately failed to secure the necessary support. This outcome solidifies Premier Ntuli's position, at least for now, but the political drama surrounding the vote has overshadowed the result itself, pointing to deep divisions within the provincial legislature. The vote took place amid extraordinary scenes of chaos and disruption as members of the uMkhontoweSizwe party actively attempted to halt the proceedings. MKP representatives repeatedly interrupted the session, vociferously demanding that the vote be conducted via a secret ballot, a demand that was ultimately rejected. The situation quickly escalated from a political standoff to a physical scuffle on the floor of the House, requiring intervention to restore order and allow the vote to proceed. The immediate aftermath of the disruption has revealed serious consequences. Reports confirm that at least one woman was injured during the melee, and even more concerning are the allegations that an MKP member physically assaulted the Speaker of the legislature during the height of the scuffle. These incidents have prompted calls for a full investigation into the conduct of members involved. We are following that story closely, and we'll be speaking in the next few minutes with the KZN Provincial Legislature Speaker, Nontembeko Boyce, as well as political analyst Ntsikelelo Breakfast. Good afternoon to the both of you. Let me start with you, Speaker, and just your own reflections on how the vote took place. In the manner that I've described in the introduction, but also adding your own reflections. How did the vote go? Speaker, I suspect you may be muted on your side. Yes, we've got you now.
I am not.
Yes, we've got you.
I am not.
Yes.
Good afternoon to your good self and to Mr. Breakfast as well. Firstly, I think that now after the passage of time, we have had the pleasure of going through the visuals of what happened on that Monday. We have discovered some of the things that we may not have seen at the times, and some of them were disturbing. Of course, it has come to our attention that there was an intent to disturb the voting when it came to voting. And that is owed to the fact that motions of no confidence are not new in the legislative ecosystem in the Republic of South Africa. They had happened in the National Assembly more than once. They may not have happened in KwaZulu-Natal. And they have also been taken to court in the South African perspective. And the lessons we got on that day are not reflective of what we have seen happening in the National Assembly. The level of disagreement has been there at the National Assembly, but we have never seen what we saw in the KwaZulu-Natal legislature. And we believe that there was an intention at the last moment to disturb the proceedings of the legislature.
Yeah.
But what also came as a surprise is that there was also intent to do bodily harm to some of the persons, especially to myself who was presiding and to some of the table staff that were officiating on the day, by members of the legislature and some members of the public.
Yeah. So, in fact, let me stick with you, Speaker, before I go to Ntsikelelo Breakfast for some analysis. I just want your perspective, those incidents we're talking about. For instance, were you assaulted in the course of that melee?
Yes. I was firstly obstructed to leave the House by various members of the House. But there's one particular member that I have made it known in terms of the legislature, who I believe intentionally hit me at the back. But also there are some members who stopped members who were about to attack them. Who were about to attack me. And some of those members are from the members of the EFF and the members of the MK that stopped the other members who were attacking me and also attacking the secretary and the executive manager of the parliamentary services in the legislature.
Right. A bit later on, Speaker, I will ask you about the decision about whether or not to hold the vote by secret ballot. But I do want to ask you about the response to the scuffles as they were occurring. There's been a debate about the presence of uniformed SAPS officers on the floor of the House. What are the guardrails, what are the guidelines about when you can call on members of the SAPS versus parliamentary security? Do you have parliamentary security, for example, akin to what we see in the National Assembly?
Yes, sir, we do have, and we had called them, and members assaulted them. And then there is a Rule 651 that I read out to the House, that the guides and also precedents before that you first had to, when you are going to, before SAPS comes to the House, you must.
Okay. We seem to have lost the connection to the speaker, Nontembeko Boyce. We will come back to her in a moment. But let me pick up the questions with you, Ntsikelelo Breakfast. Just your overall reflections on this voting and the chaos that happened.
Followed our rules.
Oh, okay. Speaker, I believe,
Yes,
I believe we have you back now. Speaker, can you confirm?
I am saying, sir,
Yes.
there was Rule 65.1 that I invoked and read it out, that in terms of Rule 651, I am now going to call SAPS to escort members out of the House. I therefore temporarily suspend the House. I read that out, even though members were trying to drown me, but I read it out and it's on record. It happened. That's how we are required to involve SAPS.
All right.
But as SAPS came in, there was more violence, including almost one member tried to crush a member of staff with one iron rod. And SAPS then tactically withdrew. The only time that SAPS came full force after I had adjourned the House, and members of the public, including some members, still continue to tear the House. There are visuals that you may have seen, I am sure, uMkhontoweSizwe, of members, a lady in a black dress, as well as another one wearing a T-shirt of one of the parties to the House, that were fighting it off with SAPS. Members of the public are not supposed to be inside the chamber, and that is breaking the law. And I take that as part of the SAPS now, at the end of the House, dealing with their responsibility in terms of the law. But generally, when they came in, I had invoked Rule 65.1 and I read it to the House, sir.
All right. Don't go anywhere there, Speaker. Let me bring in Ntsikelelo Breakfast, political analyst, to weigh in. Good afternoon to you, Prof. So let's start with the chaos as it played itself out, as well as the voting and outcome in which that motion of no confidence was defeated. The chaos and violence, what do you make of it? Is it a feature that came through upon realization that the political objective of the vote was not going to be achieved? Was it always inevitable that this was going to break out in the event of the demand for a secret ballot not being achieved, as well as perhaps indications that the vote was going to be defeated?
The beauty of a democracy is that in a democracy, there are always winners and losers. And the losers, they need to accept when they've lost. That is part of democratic consolidation, as opposed to throwing your toys around. The issue is that I think MK miscalculated the whole situation, because the premise of their argument was that the vote must take place in private, with the assumption that even ANC members were going to vote with them. But when they realized that was a project gone wrong, then they started to showcase violence. Because of the frustration that they had, which led them to the aggressive behavior. The other issue is that, in theory, I think MK should be the ones that are running the province, because last year they stood at 45%. So under normal circumstances, they should have joined forces with either the EFF or whichever political party. But they have themselves to blame because they questioned the electoral outcomes. And while they were busy with that, they were outmaneuvered by the ANC and the DA alongside other political parties who constituted government. So I think that frustration arises out of that. But what we saw should never have happened, whereby a speaker is assaulted in the light of 16 days of activism against gender violence.
Prof. Breakfast, I imagine that the timing of the tabling of the motion of no confidence must have been inspired by, I don't know, a reading perhaps on the side of the MK party, that perhaps the moment offered a pathway through which a motion of no confidence could be the way to remove the Premier and the sitting government, and perhaps provide a pathway for the MK party and perhaps with others for them to take over. Yeah. Was that reading realistic, given some of what had been happening within the governing coalition itself? Or should the MK party have been looking to negotiate and work that space of political negotiation as their pathway towards power?
My reading of the situation is that we must bear in mind that MK doesn't have any province that it is running, despite the fact that they did very well by replacing the EFF in the lineup of the biggest political parties in the country, because they stand in number 3, which is good. So they need to tap themselves on the back for a good job well done. But the issue is that I think they wanted to dislodge this coalition arrangement in order for them to be at the helm of power and then frame a discourse while moving towards the upcoming local government elections, and use KZN as a model that they can point to in terms of their achievements. But unfortunately, I think it was a project gone wrong, because things did not go according to plan. If they are discontent about the way things are, or about the way things should have been, then there is a policy and a procedure that they need to follow in terms of instituting a grievance, as opposed to the behavior that they projected.
So, Speaker, let me come back to you. Much turned on the question of whether or not the voting on the motion of no confidence was going to happen by secret ballot or by open voting by members. And as we know from the judgment, the UDM judgment all those years ago, the secret ballot is not a given that you will go, and not just the standard, but there are certain instances when it's read that the environment, the political environment and other factors dictate that a secret ballot be held. In your mind, in weighing up the request for a secret ballot, what were the factors that you considered, especially in the wake of arguments that say political violence is not an unknown phenomenon in KwaZulu-Natal, consequences? And I think there was a message that had been read that sort of talked about a possible threat that had been issued against some MPLs. So how did you weigh the factors for an open ballot and factors that were militating for a vote by secret ballot?
Look, from the onset, KwaZulu-Natal has been voting openly. When we were voting on questions before the House, we've been voting openly. At West, we had been voting mostly on party votes. There has never been an issue. In the House, it has happened that our rules, they allow that you vote as parties or you vote as an individual. But there is a proviso that if we vote as parties, we ask individual members, because we do not want to assume that members would vote as parties always. We would ask for members who want to vote as individuals or those who want to abstain. We say it's a vote that is different to your party. And that is contained in Rule 288 of our standing rules. We've been using that. At the beginning of the year, when we were dealing with appropriation at the beginning of the year, there were members who openly voted against the votes of their parties. I think they were about 4. And they were members from the MKP, and they were members that were mentioned in the message that was read out in the House. And nothing was done to them. And they voted against a position of their own party. Now, I come to the House expecting that what is only different is that we will not be voting as parties, we'll be voting as individuals. Then we found that the leader of the official, the chief whip of the official opposition is requesting that we vote by secret, and is saying that they are not safe. And who are they not safe for? It's someone else, and is saying that let's vote secretly, and is citing members who had stood there and debated in support of the motion and said, above that, they are calling for all members to support the motion. I'm sure, even yourself, Mr. Smelane, there is no way that I can say I'm calling for this and I am encouraging people. I am the mover of the motion. And then I make people to believe that I'm not going to vote for that. I say I'm scared to be seen that I'm voting for it. And it was unbelievable. It was not weighty enough. That's what I even said in the ruling, that it's not weighty enough to convince me. I'm not saying it can convince them. If they are convinced by it, it's fine and it's welcome. But we were not convinced. In taking this decision, we have looked at the probabilities of that. We are not saying there is no existence of that, but we don't see harm. There are members who had opted to vote against a position put forth by Honorable Mngadi, a chief whip of their party, and they voted openly and freely against their own party. There was nothing that was done to them. So I felt that it's not.
Okay.
It's not really weighty. But also, lastly, before you shut me, it was making it as if we are compelled to use the secret ballot. And we wanted to have distinctions that we are not compelled, honestly.
All right, let's leave it there. Nontembeko Boyce is the Speaker of the KwaZulu-Natal Provincial Legislature. We were also joined by Professor Ntsikelelo Breakfast for political analysis of what happened in the House this past week. On the other side of the break, we'll be taking a look at the investigations into the collapse of the temple in Verulam. That site is now being treated as a crime scene as investigations get underway. That and more still to come here on The Week in Review.